everybody, thank you for watching Leaf by Leaf. Today I'm going to go over some of my favorite nonfiction books. I'm going to do a top 10 and then 3 bonus books. This is partly in response to the Nonfiction November that's going around. However, I only plan to read a couple of nonfiction books and they're already pre-selected and they will not be featured here. So at the very least I figured I'd just make a video of my top picks. First off, number 1, Eric Auerbach, Mimesis, The Representation of Reality in Western Literature. If you've watched other videos of mine, then you've probably heard me talk about this. This is an incredible work of literary criticism. In fact, it may be my favorite work of literary criticism. If I'm not mistaken, Auerbach was in exile and when he wrote this, and he didn't have much of his library with him, but he just wanted to get out some thoughts that he had about very specific little scenes or moments or tropes or tableaux from work that expands from the Odyssey to Petronius's Satyricon. He does a comparative study of Tacitus and Ovid and St. Jerome and St. Augustine. He pits the Old Testament against Homer. Then he does the Chanson de Roland. He does the Adam and Eve story. He covers Dante's Inferno, Boccaccio's Decameron, Montaigne, Shakespeare, Don Quixote, and then all the way through Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. And again, he selects just a little moment from each and just produces these incredible and highly original criticisms on each of them. Number 2, Douglas R. Hofstadter's Le Tombeau de Marot, In Praise of the Music of Language. This featured in one of my first videos that I posted on this channel. I think I was talking about Jim Gower's novel Explosives or something, but I decided to select this one instead of his magnum opus, which is Gödel Bach, An Eternal Golden Braid, which came out of his PhD dissertation. It is remarkable. But this is the best book I've ever read on translation, on the art of translation. And he's taking this Middle French poem, and he is basically obsessed with the concept of isomorphism in translating from one language to another. And as part of that, he brings in, I don't know, maybe every single topic that you could ever hope to find in the Encyclopedia Britannica, from machines to artificial intelligence to books that are lipograms, such as Georges Perec, some of his novels that omit a certain letter for the entire thing, and he brings in the Rubik's Cube, and but again, this is probably the most exhaustive and pleasurable read you can hope to get on the concept of language translation. Number 3, Robert Burton. This is The Anatomy of Melancholy. It is something like 1,300 pages. And when I began reading this, I could not let up until I was through. Basically what this comes out of is not just his facing his own melancholy and producing an exhaustive examination of melancholy, but it also comes out of what he saw as the religious madness of his time. He's tired of seeing the Protestants versus the Catholics and all the madness coming out of that. So it's really a pleasant book, and it's also a notable piece of prose stylism from the 17th century England. Number 4, William T. Vollmann's Carbon Ideologies. This is a 2-volume set, but I'm counting it as one book. You've heard me talk about this one in previous videos. This is his most recent work to come out. If you're watching this video before February of 2020, that is, when his novel Lucky Star comes out. But this is his latest book of nonfiction, his immersive journalism, and he's basically taking on climate change and he's taking on nuclear and natural gas and shale fracking, coal mining, and so on. And this is really, if you have any idea of the type of journalism that he does, this is about the best you can hope to get on climate change. The Mystery of the Aleph by Amir Axel. I read this on recommendation from a coworker a while back, and it's essentially all about the life and work of Georg Cantor, especially in the area of infinity. He's the one who discovered that there are actually multiple infinities, and he was the precursor of Bertrand Russell finding that there's this issue with an infinite set, because a set that contains everything would have to also contain itself, so there's a recursive error here. This one is the perfect mix of fact and myth. Here's this guy, Cantor, who loses himself literally in his work to advance our still admittedly meager understanding of infinity, but this guy came as close as you can possibly come, and of course started having mental breakdowns and so on. So there's a whole lot of myth around all that, but this was a national bestseller, and this is also the author of Fermat's Last Theorem, which I also enjoyed. Number 6, Jonathan Haidt, The Happiness Hypothesis, Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom. This is a phenomenal book. It was put out by Basic Books, as was Le Tombeau de Marot. I love Basic Books. They put out wonderful science books. But this one is a great blend of, like it says, ancient philosophy and modern science, and especially psychology. I was very skeptical when I went into this, but the way that he puts these two seemingly contradictory disciplines side by side to derive insight into happiness is unparalleled. I've read a lot of books on achieving happiness and things like that. More articles than books, but this is definitely the cream of the crop, and it's a very respectable work of scholarship. Number 7, The Unseen Realm by Michael S. Heiser. I'm really getting into this guy, Michael S. Heiser. He is about the most concrete scholar in the area of theology and biblical studies that you can get. Now, a lot of you may scoff at the fact that you may not see the Bible as nonfiction, or even a study of the Bible as nonfiction. I get that and I respect that. However, I have read and continue to read a lot of theology. I've read through the Bible several times, and I'm doing a read through right now. I'm getting a little bogged down in First Chronicles, but I'm pressing on. I do believe that it is essential, but the Old and New, or to be respectful, the Hebrew Bible and the Protestant New Testament, I believe that they're essential for any literary-minded person. But beyond that, there is a wealth of solid wisdom in both testaments. And however, despite growing up with a lot of insight into the Bible and so on, this one, after I read this one, which blew my mind over and over and over, I truly felt like I had never read the Bible in my life, and I gained an even greater appreciation of it. Number 8, Robert Lanza, Beyond Biocentrism. There's actually a previous book, I can't remember what it's called. It might just be Biocentrism, and then this one is Beyond Biocentrism. But this is getting deep into physics. It's getting into time, space, consciousness, and the illusion of death, which is in the subtitle there. I really enjoyed this book and didn't really know if it was going to bring anything new to the table, or if it was just going to be a rehash in his own words. However, I think it was about the 6th and 7th chapter. When I read those, I started foisting this book on everyone I could. Highly recommended. Number 9, When Einstein Walked with Gödel, Excursions to the Edge of Thought. This is basically comprised of Jim Holt's essays on mathematics. And I've always had a tough time with mathematics. I love physics, which I know encompasses a lot of mathematics. But I guess the splendor of physics speaks more to me, whereas math can seem very dry. But these essays will bring math alive to you in a way that will make you want to study the history of the discipline and the implications of the discoveries therein. And finally, number 10, Norman Davies, his massive work on the history of Europe. I read this, it probably took me, I think it took me about 2 months to read through this. This is a supreme work of scholarship. And another fun fact about this one is that I took it with me on a flight to Boston, and it was in my backpack, and TSA actually pulled my backpack aside because they said there was something in there that was too dense for the scanner to see through, and it was in fact this book. Alright, so now for my 3 bonuses in nonfiction. The History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. This is a very enjoyable book, and it's very engaging the way it's written. It's basically split into 3 parts. There's ancient philosophy, and then a long period of Middle Ages with Catholic philosophy, and then finally modern philosophy, especially focusing on, it's basically from Kant all the way to Bergson, and in that vein of analytic philosophy, of which Bertrand Russell was a practitioner. Really, even though Bertrand Russell was a devout atheist, it's amazing how even-temperedly he treats the long period of Catholic history. This is, if you want a good solid base for Western philosophy, this is the book I would start with, and then perhaps Will Durant's The Story of Philosophy. The next bonus is actually a 3-book set, In the Dust of This Planet by Eugene Thacker. He's a teacher at the New School in New York City. And his first volume is In the Dust of This Planet. The second volume is Starry Speculative Corpse, and the third one is Tentacles Longer Than Night. Great names, especially for books that purport to be a horror of philosophy. So not a philosophy of horror, but the horror of philosophy, which is funny. I first heard about In the Dust of This Planet when I was listening to a podcast from This American Life, and they actually interviewed Eugene Thacker. I recommend that if you can seek it out, and I'll put the link to it in the description. But Eugene Thacker has a preoccupation with horror movies, horror books, and so on, and the philosophies that are implicated in there. And he doesn't just look at popular works of horror. He's looking deep into the bowels of it. Recommended. And finally, Marilynne Robinson, When I Was a Child, I Read Books. This is an earlier essay collection. I love all of her essays, and I love all of her novels, especially Housekeeping and Home. But this one, The Fate of Ideas, Moses, is probably my favorite, and The Freedom of Thought. She has a way of looking at things from a wide angle. And taking what would otherwise be a sweep of generalities and synthesizing them together and running them through her own intelligence to create these essays for us to really think. That's her major preoccupation, is she wants people to think deeply throughout their lives. So that's it. Those are my nonfiction November suggestions. Let me know what yours are.